Hi, it's John, the Old Geek, and I'm back with another old school D&D video. This one is prompted by a forum thread and some of the opinions that were shown there, along with other YouTube videos I've seen on this subject. Now, those of you who've seen my reviews will hopefully have noticed how I try to be objective and refrain from over-the-top hyperbole. If I'm critical of something, I give genuine objective reasons why. For instance, the size of the desert in the Desert of Desolation series, where I give a real-life comparison. Or the lack of meat in C3 Lost Island of Castanemere, where I refer to the page count of the module and the proportion of it made up of actual adventure. In this video, I'm going to talk about an adventure that is gaming Marmite, and as such, discussion of it tends to attract hyperbole like moths to a flame. It's either bad, or unfair, or not fun. All common statements claimed as fact, but all of course entirely subjective. I'm not going to do a typical review of this adventure, as appreciation of it is highly subjective. It supports only one gaming style. It is of course S1 Tomb of Horrors. Originally written by Gary Gygax back in 1975 and first published in 1978, this module has been revised and reissued on several occasions, the most recent being a version for 5th edition D&D, released in 2017 as part of Tales of the Yawning Portal. Its reputation is part of gaming folklore, and there can be few gamers who are unfamiliar with the dreaded Demi-Lich and some of his most iconic traps. Especially this one. So the story goes, Gygax had a number of expert players and wrote the Tomb of Horrors to genuinely test their skill. All manner of tales have since circulated regarding the methods they used to beat the tomb, all adding to its mythical status. The sole aim of the adventure is to test the ability of the players to fully utilise the capabilities of high-level characters. After all, if you are good enough at the game to fairly get a character to the lofty levels demanded by the adventure, then you should be more than able to use those characters to their full ability, right? Note, I said test the ability of the players. As with many of the adventures from this era, it was used in a tournament situation. Strange as it may seem to many modern gamers, tournaments were common at gaming conventions, and they still happen. I've taken part in the Cthulhu Masters tournament at the UK Games Expo several times. D&D tournaments of the 70s and 80s had scoring systems which tended to judge groups in terms of progress, methods used to solve situations, and the number of characters surviving, and all operated to a time limit. Thus tournament adventures tended to be lethal. They needed to be so to be able to fully test the groups and produce an eventual winner. Quick thinking and creativity were key to success. Quick thinking and creativity on the part of the players. Any legitimate criticism of an adventure must first take into account its intentions. As with most modules of the era, it provides a list of example characters. However, it goes a step further and suggests how that list should be utilised based on the number of players. And it's a long list, it contains 20 characters. This makes it clear to me that the primary aim of the adventure was as a one-shot. It also makes no attempt to hide the style of adventure it is. Listen to this excerpt from the DM notes. This is written in capital letters. This is a thinking person's module, and if your group is a hack and slay gathering, they will be unhappy. That's completely clear. So if people criticise it for being unsuitable for a story-based campaign or long-term campaign characters, it will be like criticising this car for its lack of boot space. For those who are too young, that's an original Mini, designed to be a cheap, economical, nimble little city car. A work of genius in its day, iconic and revolutionary and stylish. Sure, you can say, I don't like such small cars, or I like fast, powerful cars, both are valid opinions, but neither mean the Mini was a terrible car. It clearly was not. I don't like basketball. Does that make basketball a bad sport? Perhaps the most common complaint I see about the Tomb of Horrors is that it is unfair. Let me refer you back to the point I made about testing the player's ability to use high-level characters to their full potential. If you have a party of high-level PCs and you simply walk into a trap-filled tomb only to be caught unawares, then you have already failed the test. These are character levels at which nobody should ever fall for a basic pit or poison needle trap, as they have the means at their disposal to locate them beforehand. There are rules for sages in 1st edition AD&D. The party can spend time researching before ever heading out to the tomb. There's no reason they should be ill prepared. Spellcasters should choose spells wisely, but even if they don't, there's no time limit. They can rest, retreat, and relearn. If they choose to go into the tomb without suitable high-level spellcasters, it is their own fault, and those spellcasters should ready themselves with divination and curative spells, such as find traps, commune, contact higher plane, locate object, wizard eye, neutralize poison, and so on. It's not an adventure for fireballs and magic missiles. Add to this the fact that help is there in the form of a message written on the floor of the entrance passage. Characters don't notice it? That's the fault of the players. This message gives a big, fat, blatant clue as to how to make headway through some key sections of the module. Relating to the unfair claims, people often moan about the nature of the demi-lich himself. Ignore the 5th edition version in which he's been horrendously neutered. Yes, he was hard to kill, almost impossible in a straight fight. But why take him on directly? The module gives you multiple valid means of taking him out. A big clue, spoiler here, use his own dungeon against him. You're supposed to be paying attention and being creative. The answers are all in there. Unfair? Don't make me laugh. Anyone who makes that claim is missing the point. The criticism that it is not fun is entirely subjective. It might be fair, but referring back to that passage in the introduction, it makes no claims to be a module to suit everyone. If you prefer heroic hack and slash or intricate plots with fleshed out NPCs, then you won't have fun. It wasn't written for you. And that takes me back to my car analogy and the basketball one. The next criticism I see levelled at the module is that it fosters a DM versus players mentality. This claim is entirely untrue. Many of the puzzles in the tomb do not have defined solutions. Therefore it's clear that whether or not something might work is entirely up to the DM. This is very much an old school mentality where the rules did not cover all eventualities and the DM was to be an adjudicator. A belligerent or combative DM really cannot run the tomb with any degree of success. No, the module encourages fair and creative DMing. The DM needs to listen to the players' schemes and run with them, while maintaining an air of stony-faced neutrality. Besides, the DM doesn't need to try to kill the party. They'll do that to themselves often, ably assisted by the Tomb of Horrors. Perhaps the most understandable, but equally frustrating criticism is that of online commentators who have only experienced the newer adaptations, using more modern iterations of the game rules. The Tomb of Horrors is a module designed for a certain playstyle with a certain rule set. The official 5th edition conversion found in Tales of the Yawning Portal misses the mark wildly, as 5th edition characters of the equivalent level are much more resilient. Plus it tones down many of the traps and heavily neuters the demi-lich. In short, it is nowhere near the challenge the original was. Plus 5th edition games tend to be much more wham-bam in their approach. It's fantasy superheroes, whereas 1st edition was much more fantasy grave robbers. I could make a whole video on why the 5th edition conversion should never have been made. But back to the criticisms. My feeling is that quite simply, these commentators are not qualified to critique Tomb of Horrors if they have not played it in the way in which it was intended. But of course they'll continue to do so, as their hyperbole gets them clicks. But through all the hate, the Tomb of Horrors has stood firm, its legacy intact. Those who know and respect why it exists understand it, and quite rightly it is considered a classic and a rite of passage. Tomb of Horrors makes no excuses. It makes no claims to be anything other than what it is. And what it claims to be, it succeeds in admirably.